Hey everyone, in this video we'll be talking about the Perth economy and how it will relate to the Perth housing market. Will Perth boom? Is it already booming, or is this just here for a little while and we need to tread carefully because now things will bust again? The property market will bust just like it did 6 or 7 years ago. What's going on with Perth? So if you're thinking, I want to buy property under $500,000, I'm open to buying interstate, I want positive cash flow property, but not sure if Perth is right for me, then watch this video right to the end. I'll be sharing 3 graphs, 3 charts that will hopefully elucidate and give you a data-driven answer, or at least somewhat of an answer, of whether you should be considering Perth as your next investment property hotspot, you could say. So my name's PK, and I help people build passive income using data without needing a buyer's agent. And this channel really exists to help you get ahead through real estate. All right. So if you get value from this video, from this channel, I'd be so grateful if you hit subscribe and give it a like. And with regards to Perth, right, like there's this quote that I heard, that I read recently, that fear is nothing but bravery training. Fear is nothing but bravery training. If you're thinking, Perth, look, I'm so afraid of buying in Perth, you need to find markets within markets that are going to do well when everyone else is afraid, because that is a sign it's the bottom of the market. Okay, there's things to look for. Just because it's an area which is unpopular with the mainstream or the herd of investors doesn't mean that it's going to boom and it's a good time to buy. But it is one of the recipes of buying well when it's not booming, when you're not having to compete with, thousands of investors. I can tell you, like, people have been messaging me saying, PK, are your clients buying in Perth? I'm saying, yes, they are, but only very selectively. We're probably more selective about where we buy in Perth than any other city in Australia. So let's get into it. You can already see this is from JLL, which is almost like a engineering consultancy company, you could say. So WA state final demand growth rate. Okay, so almost like a state GDP figure. And the thing that I wanted to bring out in this chart was, you see back here, people are concerned about this period between the end of 2013 and let's say the start of 2018. There was this huge period where the GSP, or the GDP of Perth, declined rapidly because the mining boom ended. All right, iron ore prices fell off a cliff, and that had a trickling effect, or you could say more of a trickling effect, a rushed effect into the Perth economy, into the Perth housing market. You can see how the economy, the growth rate at one point was negative, almost negative 10%. You can see now that it has been, let's say for the last 2 years, pretty strong. It's not been declining, but really since last year, the GDP has been increasing a lot. Okay, so this is a really healthy sign of for Western Australia. Now, this isn't the only reason or any reason why we should invest our hard-earned money in the Perth property market, but it gives us the broader climate. It gives us a bit of context for what's going on, right? So let's go to the next chart. So amongst G20 economies, so these are the most developed economies across the world, when looking at quarterly GDP as of the first quarter of this year, so it's a little bit dated, and in fact, these numbers are even better for future quarters. But this is the chart that I got from JLL. What this is saying is WA as a state was better in its economy's growth rate than any other comparable country in the most developed countries across the world. So you can see Australia had basically beaten in terms of growth every other country except for India, and within Australia, WA is the strongest. So what this tells me is that WA is leading the charge, is really at the front end of spearheading Australia's growth or recovery from COVID and the real economy. I'm not talking the property market, the real economy. And I'll get to mining and resources in a second. And the thing that I think you should all know, which really strikes me as well, is that when the Sydney property markets rise and Melbourne property markets rise, as they already have, I've talked about how they're towards the peak now, it's completely unaffordable. Those of you watching in Sydney or Melbourne, you know how hard it is to get anything in Sydney under $1 million. And of course, you can't get anything that's positively geared. So it just doesn't make for strong property investment. And so naturally, a lot of you guys think about buying in Brisbane, right? Because it's kind of the next cab off the rank in affordability. It's a big capital city. Now, the thing I want you to know is that after Sydney, the highest incomes in Australia are not Melbourne, are not Brisbane, they're actually Perth, right? They're actually Perth, not just in the mining sector, but in general. And I'll get to that in a second as well. So if you're sort of thinking that, I want to buy in Brisbane because affordability is so strong there, actually, affordability is stronger in Perth. And what will happen, and Brisbaneites know this, what will happen is right now, Brisbane is booming because of not local investors or local owner occupiers. It's booming because of Sydney, Melbourne folks buying in Brisbane, like many of my clients as well. The reality, though, is that prices are growing so fast that it's fast becoming really unaffordable for locals to actually afford that kind of housing market. And what will happen is that there will be a plateau, and what will then happen is all these Sydney, Melbourne investors will think, where to next? Right now, everyone's sort of quivering in their boots about Perth, but at some point, they will go to Perth because the average median in Brisbane for housing will reach $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, whereas Perth, despite having the second highest incomes, is still hovering around that $500,000. Okay, so it just makes sense. This is going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And if you're thinking, look, that will never happen, PK, because Perth is so susceptible to the mining booms and busts. I can tell you, I live in Brisbane. I have nothing against Brisbane. I love this city. Brisbane is just as exposed to the resource sector as is Perth. In fact, more than 50% of employment in Brisbane comprises of public sector, state and local government employment plus resource employment. So if you have a change of state government or change of local mayor, or if you have a different view or different growth rate in the mining or resource sector, that impacts the Brisbane economy dramatically. So if you're thinking Brisbane is a safe bet because it's got a hugely diversified economy, that is not actually true. It is just as susceptible in my mind to the resource ups and downs as is Perth. And I'll get to that in a second. So here we go. So I just want to illustrate the labor force drivers for Perth. But before I do that, this is a really interesting comment or statement. So in April 2021, WA's unemployment rate fell below 5% for the first time since 2014. As at July 2021, the unemployment rate sits at 4.6%, with the number of people employed in the state at record highs. Okay, so this GDP strength that we saw in WA, in Perth, it's sustainable. It's not just because of mining. The general populace are gainfully employed, which can't be said for all places around Australia. In fact, the Australian unemployment rate is above 5%, right? So WA or Perth is leading the charge. I remember going to Perth for a holiday like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was strolling around the city and I was like, this is like a ghost town. It was like one of those Will Smith movies, I Am Legend, where he's in the middle of the city and there's no one there because the zombies have wiped everyone out. It felt like that. That is not the case anymore. And hopefully those of you in Perth, you can attest to the fact that there's like this buzz in Perth at the moment. Guys, I'll just share this last one with you before finishing off, so give it a subscribe if you're getting value. But what is driving the Perth economy, the WA economy? Labor force drivers. So growth year on year as at May 2021. So May last year versus May this year. I know it's a little bit old, but the stories, the narrative is the same. The predominant increase in employment is not because of mining, which is just 14%. It's actually because of transport, postal and warehousing type employment, healthcare. Now we know the types of salaries and stability that the medical professionals have, manufacturing, which, is gainfully employing people, mining and construction. Right? These are the two most susceptible to ups and downs, and these are the three that are least susceptible to ups and downs, and those are the three that are really causing this employment rate to shoot up, or the unemployment rate to come down. So the takeaway from this video, it's not an exhaustive analysis of the Perth market, but the takeaway here is that this is not a one trick pony town. Perth is not a mining town. It is just as susceptible to the ups and downs of the resource sector as Brisbane. So if you're investing in Brisbane, that's the same thing from that perspective, from that mindset, as investing in Perth. But I can tell you that is no longer a mining town like it perhaps used to be. And really, you have to be very selective. There's always markets within the market. So I know people are going to comment on this video saying, I wouldn't touch Perth with a 10-foot pole. Now, I don't blame you for having that opinion, and I'm not doing this video to convince you or anyone to invest in Perth. What I'm saying is Perth is not what it used to be. It is much healthier. It is booming. The property market is growing at a steady rate. Vacancy rates are low. Data is stacking up, not for all of Perth, but for select parts of Perth. Okay, so you need to really concentrate on the local government areas, on the local suburbs, local streets when investing in Perth. And I can already tell you, the properties, the suburbs that we've bought, maybe even at the start of the year in Perth, have already gone up $100,000, right? And these aren't $500,000 properties. These are like $300,000 properties that have become $400,000 properties. So the momentum is there, right? It's not going to fall off a roof. And I know a lot of you might point to the local CoreLogic, to the latest CoreLogic numbers where it says Perth, the growth rate in Perth has slowed down the most out of any capital city in the last couple of months. That's true as well. And what's driving that is a lot of investors in Perth who were burnt 5-6 years ago are now saying, look, prices are coming up. We're going to cash in while we can because we don't know what's going to happen, right? Uneducated investors, you could say. So that has increased supply, which is just, demand is high, supply increases. That just kind of eases off the price momentum. But once that phenomenon of people who are kind of scared have now sold, when that eases off, prices are likely to continue. Now, no one can predict the future, but I think that's likely to happen, especially in some suburbs. All right, so go to the community tab here on YouTube. You can see, the types of areas and the types of properties that my clients are buying. You can vibe with it. You can get educated from that. But, this kind of hopefully starts to shift your mindset around Perth, because I can tell you 5 years from now, prices in Perth are not going to be what they are right now. Hopefully that brought you value, guys. Hit the subscribe button, turn notification bell on, give it a like, and tell me your thoughts on Perth, right? I'm not the only expert on Perth. You guys know so much about Perth, I'm sure, as well. Share with me the data that you're seeing and leave it in the comments below. And as always, if you really want to step up your learning and really want to become an advanced property investor, not just talking about cities, which everyone can talk about, but no one can invest in a whole city. You can only invest in a particular suburb, particular street. That's where money is made. Check out my podcast below. Check out the Facebook group below where we talk about specific suburbs in Perth. More than 10,000 people in there. And as always, guys, always remember the most important real estate is the 6 inches between your two ears. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. My name's PK. Catch you later.